seeing the software in action. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight what Limble is, what it's supposed to help teams with, and then actually show some brief snapshots of what this would look like from someone using its perspective. And if, of course, I look forward to answer any questions at the end. So right off the bat, Limble is a computerized maintenance management software, which means that it is geared to ensure that people are easily and effectively able to keep track of all of the work that they've done on their assets, physical pieces of equipment, to ensure that they don't break. And you'll see me popping back and forth between this slide deck, which will be sent out after as well. But essentially, for your team to easily and quickly find anything and everything that's ever been done to a piece of equipment, that's what Limble wants your team to be able to have. So to be able to get equipment into the system, you of course can do a bulk import via Excel. You can call your pieces of equipment whatever you would like to make sure that it is what your team's naming convention is adhered to. Or if you simply want to say, all right, we're going to manually add one, then you have a piece of equipment in the system. And then once you have the equipment in the system, we want you to be able to have an archive of the work that you've done. And also, this is a phenomenal way to be able to leave training documentation or anything else important that you want for people to be able to find. And along the way, you'll be able to see all of the planned, unplanned tasks that are associated with the piece of equipment, the spare parts, any vendors that you might outsource tasks to. For auditing purposes, you'll have a log of all of this easily accessible. And then from the reporting, you'll be able to see things of like, hey, how much does this cost us? How much will this cost in the future if we don't change anything? What's our mean time between failure, mean time to repair? If those aspects are important to you, that's everything that Limble wants your team to be able to have at their fingertips. Of course, in a nice, easy, customizable parent-child hierarchy. So that way you know that you have the correct associations with your equipment that you need. All right. And then, of course, work has to be completed against those pieces of equipment, and you want to be able to track it. And we don't want this to be on paper. So when Limble was created, the end in mind was, okay, we want this to have the same power of the desktop, but for it to be easy and functional via the mobile app. And so Limble is completely supported by Apple and Android. And once you have your pieces of equipment in the system, then what you can do is you can start to customize your workflows and to say, this is the process that we want our team to be able to follow when they're out in the field utilizing their mobile app. And so once a task or a work order is assigned to someone, then it'll pop up right here in the open or in the top right corner. And as you can see, it will also show you how many outstanding tasks you have. So I am not on top of my tasks. We can see that right away. But when I click into this, I'll be able to see anything and everything that is assigned to me. And of course, you can have different tasks assigned to different teams based on skill set, availability, etc. But you can have whatever instructions you need. And then these people are able to simply walk through the tasks. I'm going to put in a chlorine level right here. And as you can see, it automatically updates the percentage that's completed. It's going to be showing how much time I've actually spent in the task. If I want to leave any comments, those will be here for auditing purposes. And then, of course, as I complete the task, this is going to automatically update the asset report card, which we were just looking at in the beginning. And so this is how simple you can make the actual tasks that people are completing. And of course, when you're building this out, you have complete flexibility to be able to make these tasks as thorough as you would like. So for example, if you are in a specific industry where you want to build out a workflow, because we're looking at the perspective of someone who is building out a workflow, not completing it, we want them to have to sign something electronically. Then you can have electronic signatures. If you want to build out something where you have a specific and or workflow to where you want people to be able to choose from an option list that says, okay, if something breaks, then we want them to be able to choose the appropriate option, yes or no. And so if they choose yes, then something different will happen if they choose no. And so for yes, we want them to be able to request approval. And if no, then we're simply going to capture a signature and move on with our day. And so that is how fast you are able to include and alter and change your work instructions and make them live to the rest of your team and have this give you the flexibility that you need from the work order perspective. Of course, there are also reactive work requests, things that we're not expecting. And we want team members to be able to reduce the amount of barriers that are required for people to be able to actually submit a request that something is wrong. And so for that, you can have location-specific requests, which are accessible via a QR code, which do not require a download. They do not require a subscription. You can simply scan the QR code with your mobile app. And from there, you can actually be taken to the work request portal, which is going to be completely customizable to each location. So to put this in action, and please feel free if you want to pull out your phones and scan this QR code, you of course can do that. So if I pull out this, I'm going to scan that. It's going to give me this hyperlink. And so what we're seeing is an option for how you want people to be able to submit work. So for example, if you want them to put the hours that they're available to be able to respond to a request, you can have some date ranges right here. And what that will do is that will automatically assign the task to the people that are available during this window. If you don't care about that and you simply want people to have their name, their email, and the location, and maybe add a picture, then you can have all those be required fields. And one thing which I would like to highlight here is at the bottom, these non-licensed users who are able to submit requests directly to the team members that are completing the tasks, they can check the work request that they've submitted. And they will also get updates on the tasks that they've requested to be worked on throughout the way. So this becomes a very, very easy and streamlined way for your team members or different departments to be able to communicate with each other. And of course, if someone simply wants to access this hyperlink via a desktop or a mobile app, then they can just click that and they don't need to utilize the QR code. Additionally, parts and inventory management. Not having a handle on spare parts, costs, processes, and who utilizes what and when, as we all know, can be a very, very easy way to quickly lose money for an organization. And we also know that trying to organize a spare parts inventory system can seem daunting. And that's why Limble as a platform, but as far as the parts management specifically goes, the goal of the platform is to meet you where you are. So, for example, we have a lot of clients that come to us and say, hey, we don't necessarily know where or what we have in our spare parts inventory. We're trying to get better at it. But what we want to do is we want to start using something electronic as fast as possible. And we don't want to wait to build out our entire inventory management system before we start tracking the work that we're doing. And that's completely fine because yes, you can have a spare parts inventory built out, but for clients that are in that situation, what you have the ability to do based on permission levels, of course, is add spare parts to the tasks that you're completing. And so this green plus button down here, if I click this, I can simply add a part. I'm going to choose the location that I'm at, and I'm going to add this part to it. So right here, I'm going to click create part. I'm going to call this test one. I don't even have to worry about the price. I'm going to say, all right, I am in, yeah, we'll say Naples. It's a lot warmer there. Don't even have to worry about a part number, but for this, I'll just call it this. And I know that I have 2 in stock of these. I know I do. And so if I hit create, what I have done is I have just shown that I have added a part to the task that I'm completing. And so in tandem, I've also started creating my spare parts inventory. And that cost of the part will automatically be associated when I complete this task. It'll confirm how many parts were actually utilized. And so now, if one of the goals that a company has, along with getting something a little bit more mobile friendly, is we want to know how much things are actually costing us, then you can start to see the time that it took, along with some of the costs associated. And of course, if you want to say, hey, yes, we're in double time as well, you can do that. But the reason that I bring that up is because whether you are in a situation where you have your entire spare parts inventory built out and you simply want to bulk import all of your parts and make sure that you have the ability to customize anything and everything associated with that part, like the min max quantity, or maybe just a field that's completely unique to you and you just want to confirm that you can bulk import all of that and not have to start over, you can definitely do that. Or if you're starting from scratch, that process is extremely easy as well. And then, of course, we want to try to avoid as many reactive requests and unplanned things happening as much as possible. And so now we're into the realm of planned recurring maintenance. We want to make sure that we have something coming up automatically sent to a specific team member or a specific team based on skill set. And we just want it to happen on a normal recurring basis. And we want that basis to be based off whether it be a time, a day in the month, or a monthly, quarterly, annually, or we want it to be based off mileage or how many hours a machine is running. And we want to completely customize the steps along the way. Then you have the power to do that because in Limble, if you already have a task or set of instructions created, you of course can copy from that template that's already been created. Or if you want to completely start over, you can. And then now it's a process of, okay, do you want this assigned to a specific piece of equipment or multiple pieces of equipment? How often do you want this schedule to happen? Is it daily, weekly, monthly, yearly? Okay, we'll say happens on Tuesday. And then for some advanced scheduling options, holidays, seasonal, skipping occurrences, you can of course have that. And you can also have multiple tasks associated with one piece of equipment that don't conflict. And then we're just going to assign it to this specific person. And that's how easy it is to be able to set up a PM schedule. And if I click into this, it looks completely like the other screen that we were just at when we were building out a work order, because the system is going to allow you to build out whatever steps you want, whether it be a work order, something reactive, something planned, so that way you don't run into any limitations, because Limble wants the software to fit your process, not the other way around. And then, of course, reporting. We want metrics, we want data. And if anyone is like me, it would be phenomenal if you don't have to worry about spending a ton of time building the reports that stops the actual work from being done, just like we were talking about with spare parts. So with your reporting, the screen that I'm at right now, we call this the global dashboard. This is going to come day one. All of these reports come out of the box. You don't have to worry about building anything. All of the numbers will be blank, of course. However, as soon as you start to complete tasks, whether it be planned or unplanned, all of this will be populated for you in a living, breathing way that you don't have to worry about editing, updating. It's all going to be here for you if you want to use it or not. But as you can see, this gives you a ton of insight into your organization, whether it be from an employee performance perspective. You can click on any of these tiles to be able to see who completed what, when, and even click into some of these work requests or rounds or whatever other naming convention you have to start to get some information. What comments were associated? What spare parts were utilized? And that is the flexibility which the reporting gives you. And then, of course, your company is different and you have different initiatives. You have different team members. You have different goals. And so within these, you have the ability to come over to the custom dashboards, and with the help of the customer success manager, which we provide and works with you for as long as you work with us, or on your own, because throughout the entire software, you are going to have YouTube tutorials which show you how to do everything that we've just talked about. You can start to build out any of the specific reports which are not out of the box. So, okay, we have an initiative where we want to be able to see all of the tasks that are unplanned, that have been completed, or are in a custom status specific to our company within a specific date range. We'll say last week. It's automatically going to update the date range. We want this to be in a list view, and we want to see who it was completed by. And let's see, we want to see the time spent. I want to see the total operating costs, and now you can just see all of the options. So I'm only going to click on this to show the level of granularity which you can drill down into if you want to or not, because you don't have to make this more complicated than you want to, because I haven't completed any work, so that's why there's not going to be that. And if you run into this, just to show how easy it is to be able to customize it, all time, save. Now the report has updated. So that's what Limble provides you from a reporting perspective and also a support perspective, because you're not going to be on your own unless you want to during that process. And then, of course, we've talked about outsourcing briefly. You do have the ability to see and increase the communication between your vendors as well, because any task that you have in Limble, you're going to be able to see on a calendar, You're going to be able to see what's up and coming, what's more critical than others. And the way that vendors come into play is because without them needing a license, without them needing anything else, you can simply click into any of these tasks, click this button up here, and you can share a task externally with a vendor that should be taking care of that task for you. And so from here, obviously need a valid email address, but this task that you build out is going to be shared with them via their email. And when they complete that, it'll be automatically associated with that piece of equipment and build into some of the reports which we've briefly touched on. And just like everything else, adding a vendor is as easy as 1, 2, 3. And if you have a list of vendors that you want to import, just like your parts or your assets, then of course you can bulk upload all of that. It's depending on where you are with the actual system. So that is a high level overview of the software. There are going to be a couple case studies sent out after for you to review. And of course, please reach out to Viva Select California with any more questions. However, I'm going to stop right there since I've been rambling for more than I really care to and want to open it up for any questions that come up.
Perfect. Thanks, Bobby. So our first question is, can Limble connect to my other software's ERP?
Of course. So Limble has an completely open API. And so what I mean by that is it has the ability to be able to connect to anything that you would like to. And this documentation can be sent over. It gives you a very, very easy step-by-step way for you to see how you can connect it to either your specific ERP, another type of software throughout your organization that you're already utilizing, which you want to increase any of the objectives that we've talked about. The answer is yes.
Awesome. Thank you. Our next one is, when we create a part number, can we have the vendor part number and our internal part number?
Of course. And thank you for bringing that up because that brings into question what fields can we have associated with not only our parts, but our assets, our vendors? How can we make sure that this is ours and it doesn't limit us? And this can all be done via a bulk upload. So these categories are here waiting for you. You don't have to do what I'm about to do. But let's say that we have a vendor number. And this is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. A very, very clever naming convention. I know, patent pending. And then we're going to have an internal part number. You can do that as well. And so from here, you're able to see all of the columns which you can add. You can have top of mind and visible, and it's the exact same way with assets. Any information that you want associated with your parts, with your assets, with your vendors, with your PMs, the answer is yes. Thank you for asking that.
Our next one is there a charge per user and requester?
There are no charges for requesters. Requesters and vendors are included, and you can have an unlimited amount, and there's no hidden fee association. So if you want to get into an exaggerated example of what happens if I have one named user and 1,000 work requesters, then you only have to get a named license for that one user, and there are no costs for the requesters because Limble is a named user model, and it's from the perspective of the user being who actually needs to log into the system, who needs to complete work, and who actually needs to utilize the desktop or the mobile app. That's what we consider a user. And if that created more questions than intended, happy to go through those as well. That is a very good question.
Perfect. And then we have two questions related to how it's based. Is Limble on-prem or in the cloud?
Limble is entirely cloud-based.
Wonderful. And then our next one, when we add a widget for custom report, can more than one option be selected per category? For example, last year versus this year on same report or unplanned maintenance versus planned maintenance.
Yes. So for time, you have the ability to be able to compare and contrast a couple different things. So like let's say that we want to have a bar graph and we want to split it up by year. So we want to have a year by year analysis or a month by month. You of course can do that. And then within here, we want to see, okay, planned versus unplanned comparison. You can do that. If you want it to look a little differently and you simply want to have it in a list view and you want to say, okay, there is a very, very specific task type of type of assignment which we want to focus on and we want to compare that assignment specifically, then you of course can do that as well within those same time constraints. So that's a very, very long-winded way of saying yes, you can do both.
Awesome, thank you. Our next question, is there capability for adding multiple departments and assigning PMs to a department rather than an individual?
Yeah, of course. And in Limble, the vernacular that you're going to see instead of departments is going to be a team, but it's the exact same thing. So in here, you can create a team and you can call it our plumbing team, our electrical team, or our electrical department, and really just call it, all right, anything you want. And then for these specific users, what team do we want them to be on? Because within each specific user, they are going to have a unique set of permissions. So that way, if you're like, okay, everyone on this team, we want them to be able to see or not see anything that they need to see. And then we're just going to add them to these teams. And then that's how you can group it into departments.
Great. Our next question is, when we enter a diaphragm kit for a urinal but have three separate styles but all fall under the title category, can we add at a sub-level part of that same part category?
So
Uh,
the part category would all be the type of urinal cakes. And so let's see here. So you don't have a parent-child relationship for the actual parts, and the reason is because right here on completing the actual task, we want to make it a little bit easier for you. And so when building out the actual task, you have the ability to associate whatever parts you need. So for example, when someone is filling out the task and in the example it's like, hey, we have a urinal cake but there are three types, instead of having someone have to go through a parent or child, it's simply going to be urinal cake 1, urinal cake 2. They're all going to be suggested, and then at the end when they're actually completing it, it'll say, okay, what parts were actually used. Okay, I did not use this cake but I did use that cake. That's how it's structured.
Wonderful. And then our last question for now, as we're coming up on time, is do field technical support representatives need to have a user license, or can they just receive the work orders and enter the information necessary required, add pictures, what the issue is, what they did to fix it, etc.?
So from that, I'm hearing that they don't need full access to the system. They're really just going to be opening their mobile app and completing the task they're assigned to them, and then maybe assigning a picture, and that's all they need to do. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes.
Perfect. Then yeah, so we have what we call a limited user. And so that way they don't need a full license. It gives them just a little bit of functionality, but not to the point where they're not using a lot of the software, and teams have to be in a situation where they have to pay for a license that's not being utilized by 98%. So we would call that a limited user, and happy to go through that in more detail later if we need to.
Wonderful. Well, I think that's all the time we have for questions. We are up on the hour. But thank you, Bobby, and thank you to everyone who attended. If anyone would like to review any portion of this webinar, a recording will be available on YouTube and our website, california.avivaselect.com, once available, and you'll be receiving a copy of it via email. Thank you again for attending, and have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.